Cain Ltor was an Imperial Guard who defended his master even though he had taken the route of madness by making a pact with a demon. Cain lost to his friend, the rebel leader, Halo Restston. Halo screams at Cain, asking him why he turned his sword at the last minute when he could have surrendered. Cain has been free to make his own choice for the 29 years that he has been alive. However, he considers death to be true freedom. He finally closes his eyes in death while his friend Halo cries and begs him to wake up, but it is too late. Cain soon finds himself in the realm of the dead. It is an expanse of nothing, but Cain sees it as freedom. He wonders why his friend, Halo, is crying like a baby. Cain shrugs this aside, believing that Halo will manage on his own. Cain is about to settle down to finally enjoy the freedom that he has been given when a bright light appears beside him. Suddenly, Cain finds himself in a strange environment. He has been reborn as a baby, but surprisingly, not just any baby. He has been reborn as Halo's grandson. It turns out that he has been given a name, and he is now Karon. Karon cannot believe that Halo is now old and wrinkled. But the most frustrating situation of all is that he has been reborn as Halo's grandson. Years later, Karon is taking history lessons from his tutor. He reads a popular history book to him, which was written by Halo. Apparently, the event that happened between Halo and Cain was 45 years ago. Halo wrote in the book that Cain met his death alongside the evil emperor 45 years ago. He could not stop his master from straying onto a wrongful path, but he can be considered a symbol of unwavering loyalty as he stood by his master until the very end. After his tutor is done reading the chapter to him, he asks Karon about his thoughts. Before answering, Karon demands to know what his tutor thinks. The man mentions that the Duke, Halo, simply wished to restore his friend's honor. The story that Halo and Cain were friends was known to everyone. The moment he says this, Karon gets up from his seat and asks his tutor if he is sure about what he said. With a stern face, Karon tells his teacher that he believes that his grandfather actually holds a grudge against his friend, which is why he is trying to immortalize his name. The teacher is shocked to hear this, and he demands further insight into what Karon is instigating. Karon says Halo must have resented his friend because he didn't join him to rebel against the evil emperor, but instead stood against him. Karon is confident that Halo is doing all of this to punish his friend. Apparently, Cain just wanted a peaceful death without being regarded as a hero, but Halo is doing the utmost opposite. It finally dawns on the tutor that Karon might be onto something because there were reports that the duel between Halo and Cain ended so very fast, which is weird because the duo are of the same standing when it comes to skills. The tutor realizes the possibility that Cain might have chosen death instead of giving his friend a proper death. The tutor cannot believe a 10-year-old boy is actually coming up with such a brilliant deduction. However, he knows that he can't agree with what Karon is saying because the dukedom will simply charge him with blasphemy and have his head. Just then, Karon relieves the tension in the room, telling his tutor that he was just messing with him and that's all. The teacher finally heaves a sigh of relief. After his lesson with the teacher, he walks down the hallway and narrates how he is Halo's youngest grandson. Karon cannot believe that Halo went ahead to make him a hero. Karon reaches the temple room where he finds his father, Pale, praying to their divine being. Karon walks up to his father, asking him if he is worried about his awakening ceremony, which is why he is praying. Pale admits to this, and he apologizes to Karon, telling him that he wasn't able to awaken with any powers, unlike his two older brothers. Pale is constantly praying because he is scared that he might have passed down his trash trait to Karon. Karon then places his hand on his father's shoulder, telling him that no matter what anyone says, he is the greatest father. This almost brings his old man to tears, and he hugs Karon, telling him that he is also the greatest son to him. Pale tickles his son's cheeks before suggesting that they go and eat. As usual, Karon tells his father that he wants meat. That night, Karon lies in his bed, thinking about the awakening ceremony. He remembers that in his past life, he and Halo talked about the ceremony and how it was just some dusty old tradition. Apparently, it is a ceremony to unlock one's innate magic power. Even in his past life, Karon had never cared so much about magic or even power. He has always craved freedom, just to get away from people and everything. It turns out that Karon had already awakened his magic power, but he intentionally kept mute. He wishes that he could tell his father that there is nothing to worry about. Later on, Karon and his parents head to the train station. His mother tells him that technologies like the train were made possible thanks to his father's sponsorship. Karon is glad to hear this, but Pale tries to be modest, telling his wife to stop flattering him. Karon then lets his father know that he is proud of him and his achievements. Even though Pale doesn't have magic, he alone is responsible for 30% of the Restston dukedom's finances. Karon is glad that he has a father and mother who are reliable, and he considers them the true, perfect parents. Not long after, the train arrives at the Restston family's main estate, which is called the AZURE Sea Fortress. Karon can see Halo from inside the train, and because Halo has made him into a hero, Karon is prepared to become the exact opposite of that. He wants to make sure that Halo's troubles are in vain as he plans to be the worst Restston in the history of the Reststons. When the train arrives at the station, they are welcomed by the family's grand butler, Heinrich. Accompanying Heinrich are butlers from the mansion. Karon can immediately see that the knights are special because they easily figured out that he has awakened his mana. This tells Karon that the knights are way better than the dumbasses they have in their territory. Karon knows that his grandfather will hear about this very soon, but he doesn't care. Heinrich then leads them to the main palace. Upon entering, Palais has to attend to the duties of greeting other family members. Karon has no choice but to stay in one of the waiting rooms for his father. Karon stands by the window to stare at the beauty of the fortress. Since there is nothing to do, he thinks of visiting the library. Suddenly, his cousin Leo appears behind him. Leo is surprised that Karon is already thinking of going to the library just on his first day of visiting the fortress. Leo says the rumors about him being a bookworm are actually right. Leo then starts talking trash about Pale and the fact that he can't awaken his magic, which means Karon is also like that. Leo urges him to hit the books so he can at least make money like his father. Karon gets mad when he hears this and he angrily walks toward Leo. Leo unleashes his tiny aura, trying to scare Karon off. Just then, Karon shows his true colors. An overwhelming amount of aura emerges from his body as he talks about Leo being a dog. Leo is shocked when he sees the terrifying power emanating from Karon's body. He is forced to ask Karon when he awakened his magic because his father didn't tell him about it. Karon then replies to Leo, telling him that his own father is also unaware of the fact that he has awakened his magic. After revealing this, Karon lets Leo know that there is going to be a bit of a problem. Since Karon is planning to become a trash grandson, he obviously doesn't need anyone competing with him on that. Leo almost faints out of fear as he asks Karon what he plans to do. Once Karon has informed Leo of his plan, he decides that beating him up is the next best thing. Leo can only stand like a good mummy's boy as he is about to be trashed by our MC. Later on, Pele learns from Heinrich that Karon has awakened his magic. He got this information from the knights that accompanied them to the estate. Raphael is surprised that Karon awakened and didn't say anything. Raphael is the second son of the family, and he is very good at mathematics. Raphael then turns around to look at his brother Pale, asking him whether he was planning to tell them. Pale assures them that he was also not aware of the whole thing. The first son, Tails, urges Raphael to stop with baseless accusations. Tails is aware that Pale doesn't have magic, so he might not have known that his son had already awakened his. They are in the middle of this conversation when one of the butlers comes rushing in, telling Heinrich that he needs to come. The butler then spots Raphael in the room. He lets him know what happened, and Raphael is already pissed off, ready to tear Karon to shreds. Pale tries telling him to calm down because it must have been a misunderstanding, but Raphael doesn't care. He gets to the waiting room to find his son totally disfigured after Karon has battered him like crazy. Karon tries acting like he knows nothing as he bows his head to greet his elders, but Raphael grabs him. Raphael is ready to punch Karon as he demands to know why he would hit his son the way he did. Pale rushes over to his brother to try and stop him. Without fear in his voice, Karon tells Raphael that he beat Leo up because he insulted his father. Karon even asks Raphael what he would have done if someone had insulted his father. This pisses Raphael off, and he believes that Karon is full of trash. Pale tries to get his brother to calm down, but Raphael turns to him and berates him for doing such a trash job of raising his kid. Before the whole thing escalates, Heinrich enters the room, telling them to calm down. Heinrich reveals that Halo himself has decided that he will be the judge of the case. Pale quickly grabs his son away from Raphael since their father has spoken. Pale asks his son if he is fine, and he assures his father that he is. With this, Heinrich suggests that it is time they head to Halo's chambers. Karon is ready to see Halo after a very long time. Upon getting to Halo's chambers, he asks Karon why he caused such a huge incident the moment he arrived at the AZURE Sea Fortress. Pale tries to mediate on behalf of his son, but Halo lets Pale know that the question is not for him. Halo wants to hear directly from Karon. Halo is pretty sure that Karon doesn't do things without thinking twice, so he wants to hear from him before making his judgment. Karon is impressed that Halo will hear his side of the story before making the decision to punish him or not. Karon then tells Halo the same thing he said to Raphael. Karon says he dealt with Leo because he insulted his father. Raphael gets mad and tries to interrupt Karon, but Halo smacks his table in anger, and he calls Raphael to order, telling him to know his place. Fear grips Raphael, and he quickly apologizes to his father for speaking out of turn. Halo then says it is simple because they can call Leo to ask for the details of the event from him. Halo then asks Heinrich if Leo is done receiving treatment, and Heinrich says yes. He assures Halo that he will have Leo brought to the office. Halo then tells Karon that he has something else he needs to ask him. Karon already knows what he is about to ask, and he lets his grandfather know that he awakened 3 years ago. Even Pale is shocked that it's been 3 years since Karon awakened his magic. Halo then asks him why he kept the information hidden from his father. Deep down, Halo is impressed that Karon awakened his magic on his own. Karon then claims he had no idea it was magic and he only realized it after reading a book. When he finally figured out that it was magic, Karon tells Halo that he just decided to keep it a secret for fun and nothing serious. Karon mentions that it was even more fun to keep it a secret because the knights in his territory are too dumb to figure out that he has awakened his magic. Halo then asks him if there is no addition to what he just told him, and he says yes. Just then, Leo enters the room with his face all plastered up. Halo then asks Leo if it is true that he insulted his uncle. Leo stutters before talking, and Karon quickly cuts in, telling Halo that he is actually sorry to have hit his cousin, even though he talked trash about how incompetent his father was. Even Leo is surprised when he hears the words coming out of Karon's mouth because he is basically exaggerating things. Leo wants to debunk this, but a quick look at Karon's scary face lets him know that he is so done if he tries to play smarty pants. Halo then asks Leo again if what Karon said is the truth. Leo has no choice but to admit to this, telling his grandfather that it was the truth. Halo then decides not to pass his judgment yet, since the awakening ceremony is the next day. He assures them that their punishment will be given to them after the awakening ceremony. With this, he dismisses his sons and grandsons from his chambers. Later that night, Halo talks to Heinrich about Karon. They both agree that Karon is an interesting boy. Halo is impressed with the fact that Karon awakened his power 3 years ago, and even hid it from everyone. In addition to this, Halo believes that Karon is questioning the skill of the knights he assigned to Pele's territory. Halo believes that the boy is subtly telling him that he was neglecting his son, Pal. Heinrich doesn't think this is the case, and he tells Halo that he must be overthinking things. Halo argues differently, saying that exactly is the case because he can sense that Karon is a different breed. However, he is confident that if there is anything special about Karon, they are going to find out the next day, which is the awakening ceremony. Halo is curious to see if Karon will be able to safely finish the awakening ceremony, and if he does, he is curious to see what power he will awaken in the process. The following night, Karon joins his father, his grandfather, and the elders of the family as they walk into the woods. Karon can sense how incredibly skilled the elders are, even though they have retired from active duty. There are Tails and his daughter Leona with them. Raphael and his brat son Leo are also present. Because of how the whole family is gathered, Karon figures out that the whole thing is far more important than he thought. Momentarily, they arrive at their destination, which is the Stone of Oath. Halo declares that it is time they begin the awakening ceremony. He tells the participants that once they pass through the rift opened by the Stone of Oath, they will find a world materialized by the Stone of Oath. Apparently, the world shown by the Oath is different for every person. Halo mentions that the ceremony will end when the participant uses the weapon obtained in that world to destroy the world itself. After listening to all the instructions, Karon believes that he is ready. Halo whips out his pendant and performs a simple spell that resonates with the Stone of Oath. This leaves a blinding light that shines into the sky. Halo then urges Karon to step inside the rift that just opened, unless he is scared. Halo is worried about his son, but Karon assures him that he will be fine. However, Karon is still particular about the entire thing of his using the weapon he finds beyond the rift to destroy the world. Since he enjoys destroying things, he believes that it would be very easy for him to do that. Just as he is about to fully disappear into the rift, he hears his grandfather telling him to overcome his fear. Karon enters the rift and soon finds himself in a familiar location. This was the palace where he fought to defend his master, the evil emperor. Bodies of his men are littered everywhere, and Karon wonders why the rift is showing this to him. Karon assumes that the rift is trying to get him to feel guilty about the deaths of his innocent comrades. Karon continues following the stairs of the main palace that lead to the throne. Suddenly, he hears a voice telling him that his world is cruel and desolate. The voice calls him a child of the Blue Wolves. He is told that the time of the covenant has come, and the voice promises to fulfill what was made with his ancestor. Karon tries to guess if the voice he is hearing is that of a demon. The voice then tells him that the blood that flows in his veins cannot be invaded by a lowly demon. The voice urges him to overcome his fear and ascend to the throne. Karon finally makes it to the throne room, and he notices that there is something sitting on the throne. This was a throne that the Emperor wanted to protect so much that he had to make a deal with a demon. Karon feels guilty that he and his comrades had to die because of that. Once he reaches the throne, the voice welcomes him on behalf of the Blue Clan. Just then, Karon spots a sword on the throne, and the voice tells him that this is his weapon. Karon is shocked to see this because it is his beloved sword that was given to him by the Emperor. The sword is known as the Demon Sword Ruin. The voice then urges Karon to infuse his mana into the sword. Karon is scared to do this because it is a demonic sword that eats the user's soul. Karon is assured by the voice that the evil thoughts that were residing in the sword have been expelled by Halo. The voice claims that what Karon is staring at is merely a distorted form placed by a demon. The voice urges Karon to grab the sword and awaken it because only he can. Karon wonders if it is actually okay for him to touch the sword. He is scared that he might return to his past self, who took countless lives by obeying the Emperor's orders. Just then, he remembers Halo telling him to overcome his fear. He finally realizes that the purpose of the awakening ceremony is not just to obtain a weapon, but for the family heir, who has awakened the Azure Clarity to overcome the source of his fear. Since this is the case, Karon grabs the sword. His eyes immediately light up as the sword starts to resonate with him. Suddenly, Karon finds himself in the Clarity Zone. The sword starts to change form, with the red aura on it dissipating. The voice then tells Karon that it has no idea why the sword met Karon in such a form, but the sword is originally the sword of his founding father, Rael. The voice lets Karon know that the sword his grandfather took was also the sword of a founding father. But unlike his grandfather, the reason why the sword wasn't recorded in history was that it possesses a power that is completely different from the power that his family usually wields. Karon grabs onto the sword, and the mana from the sword starts seeping into his body, causing him immense pain. However, the voice urges him to endure the pain as the mana runs through his body. Karon smiles as he realizes that the mana energy flowing into his body has become more intense. Because of the amazing feeling he is getting, Karon figures out that the Azure mana is incredible. Karon then asks the voice about the real name of the sword. The voice glazes the sword, talking about how it has beheaded countless demons and devoured their powers. The voice continues with the glaze as it mentions that the sword is one that even demons feared, which is why its existence was erased from memory. It is a sword born from the deep sea of the north, a place dark yet pure. The voice finally reveals the sword's name, and it is called the Execution Sword, the Guillotine. Karon is amazed by the appearance of the sword and the power it holds. The voice then informs Karon that the sword resembles the deep sea's darkness, which is why it suits his destiny so well. Karon then decides to ask the voice for its identity. He presumes that the voice is part of the Blue clan, which is the family's guardian dragon. However, the voice lets Karon know that he doesn't have the power to know its true name yet. The voice then mentions that Karon can find it in the North Sea if he one day gets the power to dominate the sea. After this, Karon asks the voice how he is supposed to get out of the rift, and the voice points out that it should already be obvious to him. It dawns on Karon that he needs to destroy the throne. Without hesitation, Karon smashes the throne to pieces since this is what he has always wanted to do. Meanwhile, the family members are waiting for Karon to emerge from the Stone of Oath. Halo notices that Pale is worried, and he urges him not to be. Halo understands why he is worried, but tells him to compose himself. Suddenly, the stone starts to twitch, and a bright light appears in the middle of the stone before shattering into pieces, leaving everyone shocked and stunned. Just then, Karon emerges from where the stone is supposed to be, scratching his head. Judging by how everyone is staring at him, he knows that he has messed something up again. He suddenly realizes that the Stone of Oath is nowhere to be found. Pale holds his head in fear since he can't believe that the Stone of Oath just shattered due to his son's awakening ceremony. Karon tries to act all cool with his grandfather by distracting him from the stone to the weapon in his hand. Halo takes a better look at the weapon and realizes that it is the guillotine, which belonged to their ancestor. This was a sword that was erased even from the family's history and was passed down orally to the head of the family and the elders. Halo wonders why the sword has suddenly appeared. He wonders if the time of the Covenant is approaching. He realizes that Karon is holding the sword so well, and he wonders if he is not scared of it. Karon simply answers that he is not scared of it. Halo then reveals that long ago, their ancestors, who could not fulfill their covenant with the Blue Dragon to annihilate the demons crossing from the world's end, left behind the Stone of Oath as proof of the covenant, vowing to the future. They were patiently waiting for the one who would one day carry out that covenant. Since Karon just appeared with the mysterious sword, Halo wonders if he is the one to carry out the said covenant. Halo then raises his hand to declare that Karon, son of Pale, is a rightful member of the AZURE Sea Fortress. He adds that he is a direct descendant chosen by the guillotine and worthy of inheriting the Spirit Sea style. Raphael cannot believe that the brat, who beat up his son, is the one receiving the Spirit Sea style. Pele just rushes over to his son to ask him if he is hurt, but he assures his father that he is fine. Even Tails is surprised by the sudden turn of events because he thought he knew every weapon in their history, but he had not once heard of the guillotine. In addition to that, the mere sight of the sword sends chills down his spine. Once everything is settled, Halo tells his family members that it is time they leave. When Halo turns around to leave, Raphael calls Tails back to complain to him. He asks Tails if he had heard about the sword before, but he says no. Raphael is obviously pissed, and he is ready to destroy things, but Tails urges him to calm down, telling him that it is not the time to fight amongst themselves. Momentarily, Pale and his wife prepare to return to their territory, but Karon is to be left behind because of training. At the station, Pale asks Karon if he will be fine, and he says yes. Heinrich assures Pale that there is no place safer than the AZURE Sea Fortress. Pale agrees with this, but tells Heinrich that he is not worried about external enemies. Rather, he is worried about internal threats. At the same time, he is trying to take solace in the fact that his brothers will not act rashly with their father around. Heinrich then tells Pale that the person assigned to conduct the Spirit Sea style inheritance for Karon is Sabina. When Karon hears that his aunt will be in charge of this, he heaves a sigh of relief. Sabina Restston is Halo's sister, and she is known as a master who is also skilled as Halo himself. At some point, she was even referred to as the White Wolf. Pale lets Karon know that Sabina has always liked him, so he urges Karon not to disrespect his aunt. Karon assures his father that he will do his best not to. Heinrich then mentions that Halo is making plans to prepare a residence for him at the AZURE Sea Fortress, which means he can visit anytime he wants. Pale is brought to tears when he hears this, as he is finally getting the treatment of a family member. Pale thanks Heinrich for his help, and says he can finally leave without worries. Pale pats his son on the head and tells him to never hesitate to reach out if he needs anything. With this, Pale and his wife leave. Later on, Heinrich leads Karon to where Sabina is waiting. Karon talks about how he is eager to see his aunt grandmother. Heinrich then advises him not to refer to Sabina as grandmother, since she dislikes being called that. Karon takes the advice to heart, but wonders what is wrong with an old woman getting called grandmother. They soon arrive at the cultivation chamber of the AZURE Sea Fortress, which is only available to direct descendants of the family. Heinrich lets Karon know that Sabina is waiting for him inside. He adds that Leo is also waiting inside the chambers. When Karon learns of his cousin's presence in the chambers, he already thinks of how much pain he is going to inflict on him. Heinrich says Raphael was the one who specifically requested Sabina to mentor his son. Karon excitedly runs over to the chambers as he cannot wait to meet his cousin. Heinrich can see that things are about to get lively in the house after a long while. Just as he reaches the door, Karon can already sense immense magical power coming from the inside. Just then he hears Sabina's voice from inside the house, asking him why he is not entering. Karon gently opens the door and offers his greetings. Karon is shocked when he sees Sabina, and the shock is written all over his face. Even Sabina sees this, and she knows that Karon is in shock because she is looking like a beautiful, stunning young woman, and not what Karon was expecting. Karon is left to wonder if Sabina reconstructed her body with magic power. He figures out that this is the realm of the 8-star Knight. Sabina then tells Karon to get out of his zone and stop staring like a lamp. She urges Karon to sit in a cross-legged position. She tells Karon to sit next to Leo, and Leo is already shaking the moment he spots his cousin walking up to him. Karon makes it worse by getting very close to Leo and telling him that their possibility of seeing each other has just increased. Once Karon is in position, Sabina reveals her surprise that he knows about her being the White Wolf. Karon mentions that he likes studying, which is why he got to learn a lot in history. Sabina realizes that Halo wasn't joking when he said Karon is an interesting kid. Karon immediately becomes interested, and he asks Sabina what his grandfather said about him. Apparently, Halo told Sabina that Karon is an interesting kid and that she will take a liking to him. Halo also added that Karon is a kid who must navigate the vast ocean so that he can rule the sea one day. And for this, Halo wants Sabina to become Karon's lighthouse. Just by seeing Karon once, Sabina already agrees with her brother that Karon has immense talent. She believes that his talent is endless and vast too. She compares it to that of an open sea. Sabina believes that Karon is like a rough, untamed wave, but he sure has the potential to one day rule the great sea. Sabina cannot wait to have fun while teaching Karon the way of things. Sabina then starts her lesson, telling the boys that the cross-legged position is the most basic foundation for mana training. She assures them that it is possible to do mana training while standing up, but they need to pass the introductory stage first. Sabina shows them what she means by unleashing her mana while standing in front of them. Leo covers his eyes from the overwhelming aura, but Karon stares at Sabina to witness the incredible form of the Azure mana. Sabina then reveals that the sea domination technique is a method they use to rule the sea. Sabina says that they can actually create and operate oceans within their bodies by using Azure mana. The more oceans they operate, the stronger they become. It is when they finally get the power to operate 8 oceans that they reach the 8-star level. However, the stage at which one can operate the 8 oceans together as a singular unit is called the 9-star level. Apparently, there are only 3 9-star levels on the continent, and in the Empire, only one person has reached that level, which is Halo. When Karon hears this, his determination to surpass Halo in this life burns through his body. Sabina notices this and realizes that Karon has a strong desire for power. Sabina is already anticipating her training process with Karon. Momentarily, she teaches the boys how to allow their mana to flow through their bodies. She compares it to waves that are rough at the start. Sabina is shocked when she sees the mana level emanating from Karon's body. He cannot believe that Karon just awakened, but he is already displaying such terrifying levels of mana. She compares him to Leo, who has been taught sea domination techniques since he was 2 years old. Even though Leo has been learning this for ages, he still cannot stand by the side with Karon, with what Sabina is seeing. Sabina also notices that Karon is carving out his mana passages on his own without having to teach him. Suddenly, Karon feels a sharp pain in his body, and the moment he feels this pain, he stops the mana training, shocking Sabina. She is impressed that Karon can feel the strain on his body and stop before getting hurt. On the other hand, Leo passes out and Sabina rushes over to check on him. Because the mana training is dangerous, Sabina is there to monitor them. Karon is disappointed at how weak his cousin is. Sabina cannot believe how composed Karon is, given the burning desire inside him to get stronger. She comes to the conclusion that Karon might not need a lighthouse after all. Just then, Sabina tells Karon that she will make sure that he is safe for 3 years. She urges him to build the strength to protect himself for the next 3 years. Karon acknowledges this and takes it to heart. Shortly afterward, the 2 boys head to the night training ground. Karon carries his sword with him, and Leo tries to tell him how scary the sword is. Karon screams at Leo, telling him that he is trying to avoid the talk of the sword being menacing, is why he put it in the scabbard that was given to him by Halo. Leo quickly clears the air, saying he is fine with whatever way Karon does his thing. They meet with the Sea Wolf Knight Commander, Xeris, who lets the 2 noble boys know that he will be in charge of their training going forward. After the introductions, Karon easily figures out that Xeris is at the 8-star level. Xeris then tells the boys that he will not be addressing them as grandsons of the Duke until they are acknowledged by the Sea Wolf Knights, known as the Blue Wolves. Karon smiles at Xeris, assuring him that he doesn't care about the title since he is not used to it anyway. In addition, he is aware that it is a tradition to earn the respect of the Blue Wolves through skill. Xeris is impressed by Karon's reaction because most nobles would have voiced their displeasure. Just as expected, Leo stared at him scornfully. Xeris believes that a successor with a proper brain has finally arrived, but when he takes a closer look at Karon's resolve, he realizes that something worse has just shown up at the house. Xeris sees Karon as a bigger scoundrel than even Leo. 3 years later, Sabina and Xeris hold a meeting with Halo in his chambers. Halo tells Sabina to stop stealing his liquor, but Sabina disses him, claiming that it is payment for her teaching his grandson for 3 years, which is his request, by the way. Halo smiles because he didn't expect 3 years to fly by already. He then asks Sabina about her impressions when it comes to Karon. Sabina puts it all simply, telling Halo that his grandson is a freaking monster. Halo scolds Sabina for calling his grandson a monster. He then asks Xeris about his personal opinions too. Surprisingly, Xeris shares the same opinion as Sabina. Xeris says Karon is exceptional in every aspect, and this includes his physical abilities, innate talent, and his attitude and will towards training. Xeris takes it higher and says Karon might be a better prodigy than Hugo, the firstborn of the Tails family, who is rumored to be a genius. Sabina then tells her brother that the situation might cause problems within the family if not managed properly. She points out that Karon will definitely have an influence on the line of succession, and this might cause a rift among Halo's sons. Sabina believes that Raphael and Thales might become a threat to Karon. Sabina says Halo might have it under control for the moment, but the moment Karon's talent becomes known throughout the Empire, it is going to be a problem. Halo also understands everything Sabina is saying, but he is trying to play a cool game. Sabina then asks Halo if he thinks their family is finished since the Stone of Oath has been destroyed. Apparently, the number of magical beasts crossing over from beyond the North Sea has greatly increased. Halo then assures Sabina that the one who broke the stone will also raise a new one. This was how their founding father raised the stone back then. Sabina is surprised to hear this, since it is the first time she will. She asks her brother if it is a prophecy passed down only to the family head, and Halo says yes. He tells her that the time of the covenant is imminent. This tells Sabina that Karon is about to have a heavy burden placed on him. She asks Halo when he plans to tell Karon, and he says he will when the time is right. Later on, Pele received a letter from his son asking about his well-being. Karon told his father about his training and the fact that he needs new allowance money because what he has with him is finished. Heinrich was the one who brought the letter for Pale, and he tells him that the Azure Sea Fortress has received some life in it since Karon started staying there. However, Pele is worried that Karon standing out too much will only call attention to him. Heinrich lets Pele know that it might actually be difficult to contain the information on Karon from leaking outside the fortress. This is when it dawns on Pale that Karon might be going on a mission very soon. Pale then mentions his fear. He knows that his brothers will not be pleased with Karon's growing influence in the fortress. Heinrich then tells Pele that Sabina is extremely fond of Karon. Pele remembers that Karon has been telling him through letters for the past 3 years about how Sabina has been treating him well. Hearing it from Heinrich serves as another mode of reassurance from him. Nonetheless, Pele has heard that there is the possibility that Sabina will leave the fortress very soon. Heinrich then tells Pele that he also does not need to worry about this. He assures him that Karon has formed a strong bond with the Knights of the Azure Sea Fortress. In fact, they have given him a nickname to show how close they are. The nickname is the Young Mad Dog of the Azure Sea Fortress. While training with one of the knights, Hans, Karon goes on overdrive, forcing the dude to quickly surrender. Apparently, Hans is pretty strong for his age, but Karon is just a monster, which is why he easily overpowers the poor dude. He even makes fun of him for having balloon muscles. Hans then informs Karon that he has heard rumors that he might be going on a mission very soon. However, Xeris will be the one deciding the mission deployment time, instead of Halo, because he is currently in the capital. Hans believes that Karon might be sent to the Granary region in the western part of the duchy, where magical beast appearances have become a regular thing. Karon immediately calls Leo's attention to this, telling him that they might be going on a mission very soon. Leo is worried when he hears this because the last person he wants to go on a mission with is the scary Karon. At the same time, Leo knows that if he performs well during the mission, his parents will be pleased. On the other hand, Pale then tells Heinrich that there is another reason why he told him to deliver the letters to him personally. Pala gives Heinrich a pouch and tells him to check inside. Apparently, inspectors discovered it in a merchant's wagon coming from the barony of Belus. Heinrich dips his hand into the pouch, and he is surprised to see that it is filled with substances. Pale then tells Heinrich that he would like him to investigate the barony of Belus. Later on, Karon is sneaking out of Xeris' chambers after stealing his liquor when he runs into a dude he has not seen in the estate before. The strange dude is there to see Halo, but he is not around as he is in the capital. Karon then walks up to the dude and the butler, asking them why they are coming in so late at night. The butler then introduces the dude, saying he is Baron Rohan of House Belus. Apparently, he has an urgent matter he needs to discuss with the Duke. Rohan realizes that the person standing in front of him is Karon, the kid he has heard so much about. After learning that his issue is urgent, Karon decides to hear him out. The butler suggests that they send Rohan to the Knight Commander, but Karon argues that he is ready to listen since it is very urgent. On the other hand, Rohan is just concerned as to why a kid is carrying a liquor bottle around. The butler then leaves after telling Karon that he will inform Xeris about Rohan's presence in the estate. Rohan is impressed that Karon is already capable of making political decisions at his young age. However, he is still concerned about the drink he is holding in his hands, and he wonders if this is how the Restston family does their thing. After hearing what Rohan has to say, Karon figures out that a bandit group has settled in the eastern mountains of the barony. In addition to this, drugs have been circulating in the area since the arrival of the bandits. To make it worse, commoners are also being kidnapped and sold as slaves. Rohan reveals that they have been having issues containing the bandits because they lack proper military support. His father even mustered up the little soldiers that they had to try and combat the bandits, but they suffered heavy losses, and his father got injured in the process too. Rohan believes that his family and his people are suffering because he is incompetent. After hearing everything, Karon reveals his discontent, saying the bandits deserve to be torn apart. Karon then mentions that something is amiss. He wonders why a group of regular bandits are able to stand up to an army even though they are small. Rohan then mentions that there are reports that the bandits are deserters from the southern kingdom that is at war. Karon realizes that ever since the dethronement of the evil emperor, the Imperial army, which was downsized, has been focused on the south because of the war. Since there is no room to spare, Karon knows that there will be holes in the public order. Karon decides to go with Rohan's theory that the deserters became bandits. Karon then suggests that they have a drink to lighten the mood. Karon then reveals that Belus Barony actually borders the territory where his father resides. Because of this, Karon doesn't think he can overlook the entire thing. Karon is, in fact, offering to personally go so he can help. While sipping the drink, Rohan wonders if it is actually okay for him to take a drink from a kid. Karon is still telling Rohan to keep the drink a secret when the owner enters the room. Xeris reminds Karon that he already told him to stop touching his liquor. Rohan almost freezes to death when Xeris enters the room. Xeris then tells Rohan to relax, since there is no way he could have known about the drink. Zeros has heard about Rohan's problem concerning the bandits. Before anything else, Zeros grabs the drink away from Karon, telling him that alcohol is not good for his age. Zeros then tells Rohan that they are going to provide help for him since they can't just sit idly in the face of problems. Rohan is glad to hear this, and Zeros lets him know that troops will soon be organized to come with him to his territory. Rohan is glad to hear this, but suddenly, Karon cuts in, telling Zeros that he would like to go. Zeros is not in support of this, since they are going up against a bandit group that might have dangerous members among them. Rohan is shocked when he realizes that Karon is actually serious about coming to the territory to help. Rohan concludes that Karon is still a kid, even though he is training at the main house. Zeros acknowledges Karon's enthusiasm, but lets him know that going to battle is an entirely different thing. Zeros plans to send Karon to the west, where he knows that the danger is not that much. Zeros lets Karon know that he is not ready to let him go to an undetermined battle, but Karon lets Zeros know that he has a sweet offer for him. Momentarily, Leo finds himself tagged to Karon so that they can go on a mission together. Leo is devastated, but Karon is excited as he reminds Leo that they are about to embark on their first mission together. It turns out that Karon asked that Sabina escort them on the mission. Sabina reveals that she was also excited when she got her first mission. Rohan, on the other hand, is scared that his family will be wiped out if anything happens to Halo's beloved grandsons. Zeros can see through him, and he tells him to calm down, assuring him that nothing will happen. He lets Rohan know that Sabina is there to protect them, so he has nothing to worry about. Just then, Sabina mentions that she has no plan of helping unless she sees that the kids are about to die. This immediately sends Rohan into another wave of fear that he just escaped from. Zeros tries to convince Sabina to change her mind, but Sabina mentions why she must not be seen with the kids. Once the preparations are over, the train arrives. Sabina can see how nervous Leo is, while Karon, on the other hand, can't wait to get some action. Sabina then offers him some words of encouragement, telling him to think of how hard he has worked for the past 3 years. Sabina lets him know that he is finally getting the chance to be proudly recognized as a member of the Blue Wolves. As usual, Karon takes a dig at his brother, asking him if he is always waiting for someone to push him before he moves. Upon entering the train, Leo realizes that the moment he needs to prove himself has finally arrived faster than he thought. On the train, Sabina tells the boys that the reason she can't show herself is that the bandits will all run away the moment they catch wind that she is in the area. Since none of them wants this to happen, she suggests that she stay behind the scenes. However, Rohan is worried about entrusting the mission to Leo and Karon. He even notices that Karon is not showing any sign of fear, even though it is his first mission. Leo, on the other hand, has worries written all over his face. Leo remembers when his mother was scolding him for getting along with Karon, even though he beat him up some years back. Leo's mother lets him know that Karon is his rival, not his friend. However, Leo argued with his mother that Karon is not his rival. He mentions that his other cousin, Hugo, who is considered a genius, didn't reach 3 stars until he reached the age of 14. Leo reveals that Karon reached 4 stars at the age of 13, compared to him, who got to 3 stars at the age of 15. Leo lets his mother know that Karon is his goal, but not his rival. His mother believes that he was suffering from an inferiority complex, but he says this is not the case. Leo sees Karon's existence as a drive for him to do better. Leo is totally caught up in this memory until Sabina calls him out. Sabina understands that it is his first mission, and he is getting wrecked by his nerves. However, she wants to know if Leo is capable of cutting down an enemy if it comes to that. Sabina lets Leo know that Karon is the type of kid who doesn't hesitate to do what he needs to do. She urges Leo not to doubt himself because she knows how much he has worked for the past 3 years. She was the one who trained him after all. Leo then tells Sabina that he has taken her words to heart. The announcement soon comes that the train will be arriving at Baron Bellis' territory in 20 minutes. Sabina gets up from her seat and she tells the boys that they should address her as their master for the mission, and she will also address them as her disciples. Sabina walks to the window, shocking Rohan. He asks her where she is going, and she reveals that she needs to get off the train before they arrive at the Barony station to avoid word from spreading about her arrival. They are shocked that the lady is about to jump out of a moving train. Rohan is worried, but Sabina assures him that her grandnephews are watching, so no one will hold him responsible. After saying this, Sabina leaps out of the train and she disappears into the terrain. Rohan is shocked to see this, and he starts wondering if the whole Restston household is a bunch of scary people. Momentarily, they arrive at the Baron's house, and they visit the injured Baron in his room. He apologizes for welcoming the boys while he is sitting, and he lets them know that his body won't let him. Karon lets the man know that there is no need for him to stress himself. He asks him about his injuries, and he reveals that he was told that he is past the point of danger. In the course of their conversation, Karon tells the Baron to address him casually. The man is impressed that Karon has reached the 4th star, as this is the minimum requirement to go on a mission. Karon confirms this, but decides to diss Leo by mentioning that he is still at 3 stars. Even Leo cannot believe that Karon just brought it up when no one literally asked him. Since they are from the main family, the Baron mentions that he is scared to assign a dangerous task to them. Karon then tells the man that they cannot fail, as this will bring disgrace to the name of the family. Karon turns to Leo so he can back him up. Leo initially zones out before assuring the Baron that he has nothing to worry about. The Baron starts coughing, and Karon suggests that they leave since it feels like the man needs to rest. The Baron reveals that a guide has been prepared, and all they need to do is follow him. Soon afterward, they are seen walking through the snowy woods, following the guide given to them. Leo soon calls Karon's attention to what is bothering him. He believes that they cannot trust the guide, as there is a possibility that he is in league with the bandits. Karon is impressed when he hears this, as he commends Leo for using his brain for the first time. Karon then agrees with Leo, telling him that the guide being a spy is right. Leo is surprised that Karon is agreeing with him so fast, and he presses him further for more clarification on the situation. It turns out that Karon had a talk with Rohan when they first arrived at the station. It was during the conversation that Rohan revealed that they are planning to make use of a traitor from within. Karon was impressed by this excellent method that they plan to use. After hearing everything, Leo asks Karon why he didn't tell him from the start. Karon says Leo was nervous the entire day, and he decided not to say anything. Karon is excited about the opportunity to see a traitor turn against his lies. Apparently, Rohan has known that he was a traitor, but he intentionally left him to use, which is also brilliant on his part. To make everything look even more real, Karon and Leo are the ones acting as bait. The bandits will be happy to get their hands on nobles since they're going to fetch a high price as ransom. Karon then tells Leo to get himself ready because they are about to reach where the bandits are located. Just as predicted, they get to where the bandits are waiting. The traitor collects his pay while smiling, but unknown to him, he is just a pawn. However, Karon wastes no time pulling his weapon, as he is already pissed about the fact that the bandits are spreading drugs in his father's territory. Meanwhile, at the house, Rohan asks his father if he thinks Karon and Leo will succeed with the mission. His father mentions that there must have been a reason why the two boys were dispatched to the region. He knows that they must have been confident in their abilities. In addition to this, the man says Karon actually reminds him of Halo when he was younger. He says Karon's confident demeanor and his relaxed attitude are all traits that a younger Halo had. The old man assures Rohan that they have nothing to worry about. Back in the woods, Karon has cut down most of the bandits single-handedly. Even his brother cannot believe the monster that is at work in front of him. Karon shows no pity as they slice their bodies like butter. One of the bandits tells the unit leader that it would be better if they return to base and ask for reinforcement. However, the unit leader is egotistical since he is not ready to lose to a kid. He rushes toward Karon while threatening to show him what he is made of. Karon remains unfazed as the dude rushes at him. Karon's blue aura surrounds the area, and all it took for Karon to take down the attacking unit leader was a strike to the head. Leo is shocked when he realizes that he has drawn his sword without even realizing it. Karon has taken down all of the bandits, leaving only one. Leo realizes that Karon might be a monster, but his sword is also something else. The aura from the sword is literally overwhelming Leo. Staring at the sword alone makes it feel like he is about to have his throat slit open. The last bandit alive quickly raises his hand to avoid joining his comrades in the afterlife. Karon asks him what his name is, and he reveals that it is Urha. Karon then asks him if he has a rope, and he says yes. Moments later, Karon and Leo are seen tied together. Leo cannot believe that Karon had Urha tie them up and even carry their weapons too. Karon then tells Leo that they need to act a bait to find the base, and to this they need to make it very convincing. Karon calls Leo's sense to the fact that it would look absolutely ridiculous if they were the ones carrying their weapons. With the way they are tied, Karon believes that it would make it more convincing that Urha captured them. He also adds that Urha has to be carrying their weapons since he is a weak piece of shit, whom no one will believe that he would have been able to capture them. Urha hears them, but there is nothing he can do since his life is still very much precious to him. Karon then decides that it would be beneficial for them to get more information out of Urha before they reach their base. Karon asks him if they are deserters, and he says yes. Urha reveals that they were from the 9th Regiment, 1st Battalion of the 3rd Infantry Division of the Kingdom of Tseis. Leo is about to question him when Karon cuts in, asking Urha how big their group is. Urha reveals that they are about 130 deserters, including 2 mages. Karon is surprised to see that there are lots of bandits for him to play around with. On the other hand, Urha knows that he is in a deep mess because, judging from Karon's blue eyes, he can clearly see that he is from the House of Restston. Leo then asks Urha why they came all the way to the remote region. Urha reveals that their leader promised them that they would make enough money to get a good life if they did. Karon is surprised to see that the leader of a bandit has a mage accompanying him. Karon believes that something is off, but he will have to wait to find out. Soon afterward, they arrive at the base of the bandits. The watchmen are surprised when they see Urha coming to them with hostages. They demand to know where the others are, and Urha lies that the rest of their comrades have gone after the guards of the 2 kids he caught. Urha demands that they open the gate, and they do this. However, his comrades notice that he is acting all sensitive, and they believe that this is because he is getting excited to be praised by the boss, which is going to be his first time. As they stroll into the camp of the bandits, Karon notices that Urha is actually a soft person, even though he joined a band of thieves. Suddenly, Karon notices that there is a strange power in the air. It turns out that his sword is also reacting to it. Just then, they notice a dark red magic circle ahead of them, leaving them stunned. Karon quickly figures out that what they are witnessing is none other than black magic. Karon quickly tells Urha to cut off the ropes on his hand. Once he is free, Karon tells Leo to also draw his sword because he is going to need it very soon. He has not finished saying this when undead skeletons emerge from the magic circle. Urha jumps backward in fear and he hides behind the 2 kids. It turns out that bandits were already preparing for Karon and Leo. Karon looks up to see archers on the roof. On the balcony is the leader of the bandits, and he welcomes the kids to his camp. Karon realizes that the dark mage is not in sight, and he figures out that he is probably hiding somewhere, chanting his spell. Suddenly, Karon takes a dark turn. He puts his sword to Urha's neck, threatening to kill him if the bandits make a move. Even Leo is surprised that the whole thing has developed into a hostage situation. This is a surprising turn of events, since nobles are not supposed to do things that don't give honor to their name. The bandit leader is surprised to see a noble being taken hostage when they are supposed to be the pinnacle of honor. However, the bandit leader tells Karon that he is making a mistake. He reminds Karon that the purpose of having a hostage is when they have value. He lets Karon know that Urha is totally useless to him, so he is free to end his life if he wants to. Karon is disappointed when he hears that the bandit considered Urha to be useless trash. He removes his sword from the dude's neck and apologizes for trying to use him as a hostage. Leo then points out that they are outnumbered. He asks Karon if he has a plan, and he says yes. Karon lets Leo know that all they need to do is take down the commander of the bandits. At this point, Karon is boiling with anger, and his blue mana erupts from his body. The commander sees this and realizes that he has messed up. Karon then tells Leo to handle the skeletons while he takes out the annoying commander. Once Karon dishes out his instructions, he runs toward the commander without wasting another second. One of the skeletons attacks Leo, but he manages to block the attack. Leo wonders how he's supposed to handle a horde of skeletons by himself. The commander tries to stop Karon's charge by ordering his archers to shoot him down, but Karon is moving too fast. Karon reaches him before he can even react, and he hits his soldiers with a sword technique that takes them all out at once. Karon looks like a devil as he appears in front of the commander. He holds back from killing him, but cuts off his hand. The commander falls to the ground in pain while holding his affected arm. Karon mocks the commander, telling him that he should have attacked sooner if that was his plan. The commander is surprised that the Azure Fortress still has men to spare, even though their strength is stretched out already. Karon then reveals that the barony he is operating from is next to his father's domain. Karon assures the dude that he is not going to kill him, but he will drag him back to the Azure Sea Fortress. Karon then turns around to look at his brother, and he is impressed that Leo is actually holding out against the skeletons. Karon encourages his brother to crush the skeletons and show them the strength of the Sea Wave Sword. The commander then tells Karon not to think he has won because there is no guarantee that he will leave the camp alive. Karon then asks him what his name is, and he reveals that he is Michael Knox. Karon proceeds to cause Michael more pain by pushing his sword into his knee. Michael screams in pain, and Karon tells him to order his archers to stand down. Michael is in so much pain that he cannot defy Karon. He told his men to drop their weapons, and they all did. Karon lets him know that he likes him for being obedient. Michael cannot believe that he actually lost to two breaths. However, he still has a trump card that he is hiding. Karon sees through Michael and figures out that he still has something he is hiding. Karon believes that Michael is counting on his dark mages. Karon laughs at Michael for thinking the family will send just 2 kids without a guardian with them. Suddenly, the magic circle disappears, and the skeletons also scatter. Momentarily, the gates to the camp get smashed to pieces, leaving a loud explosion. Karon tells Michael that he wasted time and wasn't able to capture the Black Mage, but there is someone else in charge of that. Fear grips the bandits when Sabina steps into the camp holding the mage's head. Sabina then walks up to Karon and Leo, telling them that they missed the most crucial part of the evidence. Sabina lets them know that because of this, their mission is a failure. Karon doesn't really care about this, but he asks Sabina if she likes the method that he used. Sabina confesses that she will give Karon for charging into the enemy's camp without fear. However, she is also deducting points for using the hostage technique. Karon pushes Michael down the stairs, and he is horrified as he stares at the mage's head lying on the ground. Sabina then asks Karon why he pulled the hostage card. Karon reveals that he wanted to strike where the bandits least expected, because no one would expect nobles to take hostages. Sabina agrees with this, and she mentions that Karon is the greatest lunatic she has seen. Karon takes this as a compliment, and he thanks her aunt. Michael, on the other hand, cannot believe that he went up against lunatics dressed up as nobles. Sabina then suggests that they head to Bellis's castle because she has lots of questions. At this point, Michael knows that he is done for since the Restston family is a bunch of weirdos. As they left the battlefield, the captured villagers were released from their cages, and heartfelt family reunions began. Families embraced their freed loved ones in tearful joy, while Karon noticed the bandit Urha standing off to the side, visibly weighed down by guilt. With a mocking tone, Karon asked if he was feeling a prick of conscience. He told Urha it was too early for that. For all they knew, he could end up locked in the Baron's dungeon like the rest of his comrades. Karon then added that, instead of being imprisoned in the barony, Urha would be taken to the Azure Sea Fortress along with his captain. When Leo asked whether it was safe to leave Urha untied, Karon explained that they needed his help to carry their wounded captain, but warned Leo not to let his guard down. Just then, one of the rescued villagers approached and spoke in Urha's defense, asking if he would be punished as well. The villager explained that Urha had shown genuine compassion toward the prisoners, secretly bringing medicine to the sick and sharing his own food with the hungry. The villager pleaded with them to show mercy. Sabina turned to Karon for his opinion. Karon looked at the stunned Urha and decided they would consider leniency, justifying it by noting that Urha had guided them to the bandits' hideout. Gratitude overwhelmed Urha, who swore complete loyalty to Karon, vowing to serve him until death. The moment was interrupted by Leo, who called Karon over to see something important. He led him to a barrel containing a large, glowing magic stone. While the villagers celebrated and jeered at the captured bandits, Leo confidently stated that the young master would surely prepare a feast for them upon their return. But Karon was deep in thought. He had finally realized the true reason behind such a large group of bandits being stationed in a poor and remote region. A magic stone mine that even the Baron's family was unaware of. Noticing the calculating look on Karon's face, Leo asked what sort of scheme he was plotting this time. Baron Rohan and his father arrived shortly afterward to greet the rescuers. Rohan ordered the prisoners to be thrown into the dungeon and asked Sabina to hand over the bandit leader. However, Sabina, claiming she was merely a guardian, deferred responsibility to her students, Karon and Leo. Rohan then invited everyone to a modest banquet, but Karon declined, stating that they needed to return to the Azure Sea Fortress immediately. At that point, Rohan broached the matter of the mission fee, admitting that the barony lacked the resources to pay in full and requested a deferral of payment. Karon's expression shifted to one of calculated cunning. He began deliberately insulting the barony, calling it a remote place among remote places, provoking Rohan. Then, Karon revealed that the bandits had not been after coin or captives, but something far more valuable. He unveiled the magic stone to the astonished Rohan, who confessed that he had no idea such a mine existed on his land. Holding all the cards, Karon declared that he too had a proposal to make. He suggested that the Azure Sea Fortress jointly develop the magic stone mine with the barony of Belus, on the condition that the fortress provide the initial capital and security forces. Internally, Rohan was stunned. He wondered if this boy truly grasped the magnitude of what he was proposing. But he quickly realized that having the powerful Restston family as a partner in his barony's mine would be a massive gain. He concluded that Karon had calculated all of this in advance and was struck by the audacity of a child negotiating at this level. Karon added that the arrangement could also allow for the establishment of a knight garrison in the barony, solving the region's defense problems while simultaneously promoting economic growth. When Rohan asked about the profit-sharing ratio, Karon slyly deflected, saying it would be unreasonable for a child to discuss such fine details. Instead, he suggested Rohan take the matter up with his father. Rohan agreed to consult with his father and promised to make contact soon. Later, Karon asked Sabina why she had anticipated complications at the bandits' hideout. Sabina revealed that the black mage she had dealt with wasn't just any ordinary spellcaster. He was Tad Diahada, a high-level, second-degree wanted criminal in the Empire and a Sixth Circle mage. Sabina scolded both boys for getting distracted by the small fish, the bandits, and ignoring the true threat. She explained that genuine strength only grows when facing powerful opponents. Had they defeated the black mage themselves, they wouldn't have wasted time on rabble. For this reason, she declared the mission a failure, a judgment Karon accepted respectfully. She then turned to Leo, who had been feeling somewhat overlooked, and surprised him with praise. She remarked that his performance had exceeded expectations, especially given that it was his first time facing the undead. She encouraged him to trust in himself and be more confident moving forward. Meanwhile, at the Azure Sea Fortress, Halo returned from the capital. His retainers greeted him and informed him of the knight's return from the west, and that Karon, Leo, and Sabina were on their way back from their mission. Suddenly, a royal messenger arrived with an urgent letter from the Imperial Palace. Halo opened the message, and was visibly shaken by its contents. The Emperor, who had mentioned nothing of the sort before Halo's departure from the capital, had personally summoned his grandson Karon to the Imperial Palace. On the return train, Orha was carrying his wounded captain, Michael. Michael, still defiant, tried to persuade Orha to escape with him, believing there was a lapse in security. But Orha struck him angrily and refused, reminding him that he had called him useless and disposable. Any loyalty Orha once had was clearly severed. Upon their arrival at Azure Sea Fortress, they were welcomed by family members. Pale, with a sarcastic smile, remarked that Karon's surroundings remained as chaotic as ever. Karon shot back sharply, threatening him in jest. Despite the banter, Pale warmly welcomed his son. Sabina turned to speak with Pale, commenting that Halo had likely summoned him because of the commotion Karon had caused in the barony of Belus. Meanwhile, Pale congratulated his nephew Leo on his impressive performance, noting that the news of their mission's success had arrived even before they did. Leo felt a surge of pride, hopeful that both his father and grandfather would be proud of him. Karon, visibly tired, announced that he was going up to rest. The mood shifted as Sabina asked Pale whether he had heard anything regarding the Empire's shifting political landscape. Pale responded that most of the other great powers, except for their own family, were rallying around two major factions, the Salmon Duchy and the Diaz Marquisate. Sabina added that Halo had planned meetings with various families in the capital to assess the situation but had canceled them all after his discussions with the Emperor failed to produce satisfactory results. Pale elaborated that the Salmon and Diaz families had supported the overthrow of the former Emperor and played a pivotal role in installing the current one. As a result, they now held de facto control of the Empire's political apparatus. Sabina lamented the irony of Halo's situation. He had willingly stepped back from central power for the Empire's stability, only to be excluded from its future. The two concluded that the era of peace was likely coming to an end, and that their family could no longer afford to remain idle. Sabina, however, saw a strategic advantage. What Karon had done in Belus might be the most useful development at the moment. His actions had provided the family with a valid justification to deploy troops into other territories under the guise of cooperative development. She described Karon as an interesting boy, whose timing could not have been more precise. Pale chuckled, saying she praised Karon too much. Sabina corrected him, saying it wasn't praise, just fact. Later, Sir Xeris arrived to greet them, congratulating the group on subduing the fugitive bandits. He announced that interrogation of the bandit leader would begin immediately, and that he would extract every shred of information possible. When he asked about Orha's identity, Karon explained that, for now, Orha was still considered a bandit. However, since he had acted as an informant, he should be treated gently and released later. Karon added that he planned to make Orha his personal servant. Zerus agreed to this arrangement. As Karon and Leo prepared to rest, Zerus stopped them, reminding them that their mission was not yet complete, and that they still had to submit a written report. Karon asked if they could write it jointly, and Zerus permitted it. Immediately, Karon tried to shift the burden onto Leo, arguing that he had done all the hard work during the mission. When that failed, he switched to persuasion, reminding Leo that their Uncle Tails would read the report, and that this was a prime opportunity for Leo to earn merit by highlighting his own accomplishments. The argument worked, and Leo agreed. Following their conversation, Zerus ordered the prisoners to be detained. Sabina, meanwhile, casually tossed him the severed head of the wanted criminal, stating that the boy's report would be sufficient documentation. As Karon wished Leo good luck with the report, he announced his intention to visit the Mana training room to practice the fourth form he had recently unlocked, leaving Zerus stunned at his relentless drive. At that same time, Halo convened an emergency family council. He revealed that the meeting had been prompted by new information uncovered during the recent suppression of demonic activity near the castle. He instructed Heinrich to summon the Knight Commander. Zerus was brought in and presented Halo with a piece of demon skin recovered from the Western Celestial Dome region. Halo, examining the material closely, recognized the sinister energy embedded in it. It was dark mana and disturbingly familiar. He concluded that it belonged to the fallen Emperor. Halo proposed two possibilities. Either the remnant of the Emperor's will still lingered in the world, or the Emperor was somehow still alive. He suspected this revelation was tied to the current unrest rippling through the Empire. Halo then delivered another significant piece of news. The events in the barony of Belus had reached the Emperor's ears. In response, His Majesty had extended a personal invitation for Karon to come to the capital. With this, Halo announced his plan to send Karon, accompanied by Leo and the Sea Wolf Knights. However, he emphasized that he would seek Karon's opinion before confirming anything. Karon was still a child, and Halo believed it was essential to understand what he had been thinking when he brokered the deal with Baron Rohan. Halo then turned to Zerus and ordered him to bring Karon immediately. Zerus found Karon meditating in the training room. When Karon noticed his presence, he asked when he had arrived. Zerus replied that it hadn't been long. Karon remarked that aside from immediate family, only Sir Zerus was permitted to enter. But he couldn't recall Zerus ever stepping foot in the training room before, which could only mean the matter was urgent. Zerus confirmed this, informing him that the head of the family had summoned Lord Karon to the family council regarding a potential trip to the capital. He added that the full details would be provided directly by Halo upon Karon's arrival. At the council hall, Halo greeted Karon and stated that he had just heard of the successful conclusion of his first mission, which Karon confirmed. Without delay, Halo questioned why Karon had acted independently and overstepped his authority by negotiating directly with the House of Belus. He pressed further, asking whether Karon had considered that such presumptuous behavior could be seen as a grave insult. Karon immediately recognized the tone, not praise, but interrogation. Calmly, he denied the accusation, explaining that he had merely offered a single proposal to the young Baron Belus, who had accepted of his own volition. Standing before the council, Karon defended his actions. He said that, in his judgment, there had been something more important than noble etiquette. When Halo asked what could possibly outweigh courtesy, Karon replied, "The honor of the family." This answer struck Halo deeply. Internally, he acknowledged that Karon could have chosen to boast about the benefits of the deal or taken credit for himself, but instead, he had prioritized the family's name. Halo silently praised this as a splendid act of character. Based on Karon's conduct, Halo announced his decision. He acknowledged that the agreement with Belus would significantly benefit their house, and tasked his son Pale with handling the formal negotiations. Pale accepted and agreed to depart for the barony of Belus at dawn. Halo remarked that a father bringing glory to the family through his son's accomplishments was no bad thing. Halo then shifted the discussion to the Emperor's letter. He formally informed Karon that His Majesty had summoned him to the capital, as word of his actions had reached the court. Karon, reflecting on Zerus' earlier words, deduced that the Emperor's letter must have arrived before Halo returned to Azure Sea Fortress. This led him to question whether the Imperial Intelligence Network was truly that efficient, or if someone else was behind it. Thinking it over, Karon concluded that it was not the Emperor himself, but rather the powerful nobles who controlled the throne that had orchestrated the swift invitation. Halo offered Karon the option to refuse. He believed the boy already understood the political weight of going to the capital at such a turbulent time. Pale, for his part, thought Halo should not have left such a decision to a child. But Karon spoke up before either could continue. He declared that since the Emperor himself had summoned him, it was his duty to go. He also added that it would be a good opportunity to visit his maternal grandfather. When Karon asked whether he would travel alone, Halo informed him that Leo would accompany him, along with Hans's squad as their escort. Karon questioned the need for a separate guard detail if his grandfather was sending him. Laughing, Halo responded, half-jokingly, that the guards weren't for protection but for keeping Karon under control. He then announced that their departure would take place in 3 days. In a later scene, Pele concluded the formal negotiations with Baron Rohan. The agreed terms stipulated that 80% of the mine's shares would go to the Restston family and 20% to the House of Belus. However, one condition puzzled Pale. Rohan had stipulated that 5% of Belus's share, a full quarter, would be allocated directly to Karon and Leo. Finding the offer overly generous for what amounted to a simple commission, Pale asked for clarification. Rohan, a distinguished graduate of the Imperial Academy, responded candidly. He explained that the allocation was not payment, but an investment. It was a gesture meant to win the favor of the two young wolves who would one day lead the AZURE Sea Fortress. Pale found the move presumptuous. In his eyes, Rohan had overstepped by assuming he could fully grasp the future potential of Karon and Leo. The exchange grew sharp, with Pale remarking on Rohan's boldness, though he acknowledged begrudgingly that it wasn't without merit. Eventually, the boys were summoned to receive the offer. Both Karon and Leo gratefully accepted, while Rohan expressed that it was an honor for his family to enter into this partnership. As they were leaving, Leo turned to Karon with a question. After sealing the deal, he asked how their 5% share would be divided. Karon replied coolly that, naturally, he would take 9/10, leaving Leo with 1/10. Leo was stunned by the brazen claim, but Karon countered with a menacing look, clearly not open to debate. Terrified, Leo agreed at once. Pale and his aide, observing the exchange from a distance, overheard the conversation. The aide remarked that the two boys who had once fought bitterly in childhood had now become inseparable. Upon arriving in the capital, Leo was filled with both excitement and nerves. He admitted that he had only heard rumors about the city and wasn't sure how to behave. Karon reassured him, but Leo protested that they were about to meet the Emperor. His excitement was perfectly justified. Soon after, Leo drifted into fanciful thoughts of attending social parties and meeting the beautiful women of the capital. Sabina, overhearing their conversation, joined them with a smirk. She commented that Deuce was an interesting place, full of powerful fighters, and said it would be a good experience for both of them. She then called for wine glasses to toast their first completed mission. Karon, with his usual sarcasm, pointed out the lack of wine glasses in a 13-year-old boy's room. Unbothered, Sabina poured the wine into water cups instead. Turning to Leo, Sabina asked if he had ever tasted wine before. He admitted that Karon had let him try some previously. She offered him a glass, and he accepted. Raising her cup, Sabina praised their remarkable growth. Karon responded with appreciation, thanking her sincerely as his teacher. Then Sabina made a quiet announcement. The 3 years she had promised to protect them were now over. She expressed regret that she wouldn't be around to witness the chaos they would undoubtedly stir up in the capital. Leo was saddened to hear this and asked if her return to the North Sea meant they wouldn't see her again. Sabina scoffed at his sentimentality, then warned him not to attend parties with Karon. She explained that Karon's looks, talent, and smooth tongue would inevitably draw all the attention. Leo, panicking, begged Karon not to ruin his chances of finding a future bride. Karon called him an idiot and told him to shut up and keep drinking. Meanwhile, back at the AZURE Sea Fortress, Pale reported to Halo the successful conclusion of the negotiations with Velis. Halo was astonished to learn that the barony had willingly ceded a portion of their share to Karon and Leo. Pale explained that the young baron's opinion had carried significant weight. He had viewed the deal as an investment in the future. Halo praised the young baron's insight and remarked that the Resstons had gained a promising ally. He then entrusted all matters relating to the barony of Velis to Paul. However, Pale sensed there was another reason for his summons. Halo was rarely generous with praise, and his instincts proved right. Halo shifted the conversation to a more pressing matter, the Emperor's personal summons for Karon. He revealed that no member of their family had ever been summoned before, aside from himself. Then Halo shared something even more unsettling. During his recent private meeting with the Emperor, he had noticed a lingering fear in the Emperor's eyes. Continuing, Halo speculated that this fear indicated the presence of an external influence behind the invitation. Pale agreed that the situation seemed politically motivated. He asked why Halo hadn't simply refused the Emperor's request, given the political volatility. Halo explained that he hadn't refused because he was curious about Karon's potential. Karon had been chosen by the ancestral sword, Guillotine, an undeniable sign that he was destined to be at the center of the Restston legacy. Because of this, he would inevitably face dangers and trials from all sides. To Halo, the Emperor's invitation was a test, one Karon needed to face. If the boy was to shoulder the future of their family, he must first prove he could endure. Halo then turned to his son and asked if he was worried. Pale, deeply moved but composed, responded with unwavering confidence. He believed in his son. Halo was surprised by the response, then smiled, calling it a wonderful answer. The following day, Sabina prepared to return to the North Sea. Xeris asked whether she intended to say goodbye to the boys, but she declined. She had already enjoyed sharing stolen wine with them the previous night and felt it was better to leave quietly, as the boys were busy preparing for their journey. The two exchanged parting words, and Xeris promised to supply more wine on her next visit. As she departed, Sabina exchanged a silent glance with Karon, who was watching from his window. In that brief moment, a farewell was shared without words. Then she disappeared from view. Karon reflected on how the North Sea felt like home to him. He considered looking for food and wine while waiting, not expecting Sabina to have left so soon. As her presence faded, Karon mused that his uncles would likely begin to move now. And as if fate were answering his thoughts, Uncle Tails suddenly appeared behind him, startling him. At the train station, servants bustled about, carrying the young men's luggage. Leo looked around at the commotion and wondered aloud why there was so much fuss. Xeris explained that it was to be expected. They were going to meet the Emperor as official representatives of the Restston family. Karon grumbled at the presence of Hans's squad, clearly annoyed. Xeris calmly explained that their purpose was to protect them, but Hans cut in with a blunt remark. Their true role was to make sure the two boys didn't cause any trouble. Before their departure, Tails paid Karon a visit in his room. After a brief greeting, Tails acknowledged that he had heard about Karon's journey to the capital. Then, he made a single request. He asked Karon not to behave in the capital the way he did at the Azure Sea Fortress. Karon agreed on the surface, but realized that his uncle's words were an open admission. He had been watching him all this time. Tails warned him that the capital was filled with enemies waiting for the slightest excuse to strike against the Restston family. If Karon gave them that opportunity, Tails promised that he himself would deal with him harshly. As soon as Tails left, Karon's expression darkened. He scoffed at the threat, recognizing it for what it was. A show of dominance cloaked in duty. Tails was trying to assert his authority as the firstborn son. Karon, however, swore to himself that he would turn the tables and wipe that arrogant look from his uncle's face. Back at the train station, final preparations for departure were completed. Karon was bickering with Hans when Orha, the former bandit, approached to express his gratitude. He thanked Karon for giving him a second chance. Karon responded coolly, then joked dryly that he was only bringing Orha to the capital to toss him into its brutal prison, warning him not to get too comfortable. Orha, half panicked, begged Karon not to abandon him. Karon shrugged and said they would see how he behaved. Zurus stepped forward to offer one final piece of advice. Don't cause any trouble, and return home safely. Just as the train was about to depart, Pale rushed onto the platform. He had come to see his son off one last time. He explained that he simply wanted to look upon him again before he left, and that Karon's maternal grandfather was eagerly awaiting his arrival. Pale hugged his son tightly, urging him to stay safe and, if possible, avoid causing too much trouble. Karon laughed at the familiar request. After the train pulled away, Tails sat in his office, where he received troubling news. It seemed his second son's wife, Raphael's wife, was plotting something in the capital. However, Tails chose not to act, at least not yet. On board the train, Karon asked Hans how long the journey would take. Hans responded that it would be about 6 hours, passing through the autonomous territory of Taba. They began to discuss the region, an unusual place where commoners elected their mayor directly. Unlike most provinces, Taba thrived through commerce and industry, rather than agriculture. Status there was based on wealth, not bloodline. Hans explained that the region's influence within the empire stemmed from its enormous capital reserves. However, it remained under close watch by neighboring lords. Karon commented that many citizens fleeing the tyranny of corrupt aristocrats found refuge in autonomous zones like Taba. Hans noted that the territory was on good terms with Azure Sea Fortress and often entrusted major tasks to its knights. As the boys casually mused about sneaking off to visit the city during a later opportunity, Karon suddenly froze. A strange sensation coursed through his body. His sword had begun to react to an unseen presence. It was a clear sign that danger was imminent. His first thought was of his uncles, Tails or Raphael, possibly planting someone among the escorts. But he quickly dismissed the idea. They weren't reckless enough to attempt an attack so openly. Leo noticed something was wrong and called out his cousin's name, but Karon was already focused. If the threat wasn't internal, then it had to be coming from outside. With urgency, Karon turned to Hans and ordered him to contact the Taba authorities immediately. Hans, startled, asked for an explanation. Karon cut him off, shouting that there was no time. He commanded Hans to inform all train cars to prepare for an imminent attack. Though stunned, Hans didn't hesitate. He relayed the alert to the escort units, who immediately acknowledged the message and began their preparations. As the warning spread through the train, Karon considered the nature of the external threat. How could anyone possibly attack a moving train? Not far ahead, a group of masked attackers was already in motion. Their leader gave the signal. The men moved quickly, placing barrels packed with explosives along the railway and tying them together with a long fuse. Once they finished, one of them lit the fuse, and the leader gave a grim order to prepare for the blast. Moments later, the train collided with the barrels, resulting in a deafening explosion. The blast ripped through the railway, violently derailing the train and reducing entire sections of it to wreckage. Meanwhile, in the autonomous territory of Taba, the mayor presided over a chaotic and heated meeting. Attendees shouted over one another, hurling accusations back and forth. Some claimed their opponents were involved in money laundering and that the National Tax Service was actively pursuing them, while others responded with equal vehemence, accusing their rivals of the same crimes. The situation quickly escalated as one participant demanded that the mayor punish his opponents, calling them criminals. The mayor, exasperated, found himself regretting his decision to attend. He thought to himself that he should have retired after his term as finance minister. The city he once governed with pride had turned into a battleground of relentless conflict between the noble and commoner guilds. An aide suddenly entered with an urgent message. The mayor silenced the room, dismissed the quarrelsome participants, and allowed the aide to approach. One lingering attendee asked if the news was related to the tax investigation, but the mayor, lighting a cigarette with practiced calm, replied that the investigation no longer mattered. When asked if it had been canceled, he clarified that it hadn't. He simply no longer cared. He then delivered the news that brought everything else to a halt. Just 5 minutes earlier, the train traveling from the Restston family's territory to the capital had exploded. On board were the Grand Duke's 2 grandsons. The remaining man was left stunned, but the mayor, composed, explained that the implication was clear. They were all as good as dead. Back at the crash site, Karon rose slowly from the wreckage. Hans rushed over, asking if he was injured. Karon assured him it was nothing serious, just scratches. Hans immediately requested a status report. The update revealed 1 serious injury to someone named Dell and 2 minor injuries. Another report arrived from Orha's squad, confirming 2 deaths among their ranks. Karon noted to himself how severe the situation must be, considering someone like Orha was stepping up to deliver field reports. He asked Hans about their current location. Hans replied that they were roughly 10 kilometers from the autonomous territory of Taba. He added that contact had already been made with the territory before the two boys regained consciousness, and that help should be arriving soon. Despite this, Hans urged Karon and Leo to escape while they could, promising that his squad would hold off the attackers. But Karon's sword, Guillotine, reacted again, its subtle pulse alerting him to danger nearby. He realized they weren't alone. An ambush was imminent. Karon declined Hans's plan to flee, apologizing, but insisting it wasn't possible. From his perspective, the destruction of the Emperor's railway was a direct act of rebellion. If their enemies were bold enough to make such a move, there was nowhere they could safely run. He turned to Leo and asked if he could still fight. Leo confirmed he could. Karon accepted this and concluded that they had no other option. Not far away, one of the masked attackers staggered under a sudden blow. Karon appeared behind him, calm and confident. Having made his decision, he declared to himself that none of the attackers could be allowed to survive. The enemy leader, observing from a distance, took note of the unexpected number of defenders. Hans, understanding the seriousness of the situation, ordered the second squad to disembark and form a defensive line to protect the young masters. He informed Karon that every enemy attacker was of at least 3-star strength. Karon, meanwhile, focused on the leader. His aura was far stronger. He estimated him to be a 6-star. The masked commander called out to Karon by name, ordering him to surrender and drop his weapon. His voice was magically distorted. He offered to spare the knights and servants if Karon complied. Karon recognized the intention immediately. The attackers wanted to capture him alive. He asked Hans if he realized what that meant. Hans did, and he begged him not to act rashly. But Karon, fired up, shouted back, asking why he was being stopped. To him, if the enemy couldn't kill him, then that only meant he was the one capable of killing them. Leo let out a sigh at his cousin's usual recklessness. Hans gave the command for all squads to engage and protect the young masters at all costs. The battle erupted in full. The Restston Knights quickly formed a defensive perimeter around Karon and Leo, clashing violently with the masked assailants. Karon moved through the enemy ranks with ease, cutting them down one by one. He noticed their hesitation to approach him and scoffed at it, deciding to go to them himself. Seeing this, the enemy leader ordered his men to fall back, announcing that he would handle Karon personally. Karon welcomed the challenge, remarking to himself that the boss had finally stepped forward. But before he could act, Hans stepped in front of him, blocking his path. Hans insisted that this opponent was too dangerous. The enemy leader, amused by the interruption, mocked Hans for being a C-rank knight rushing toward his death. Hans retorted defiantly that they would see who would die, then charged forward with a thunderous war cry. The clash between Hans and the masked leader erupted with ferocity. The enemy commander launched a powerful offensive, but Hans managed to block the initial blow with difficulty. The masked leader was visibly surprised that his strike had been deflected. As the fight continued, Hans began to recognize his opponent's technique. Suspicion crept into his thoughts. Based on the man's combat style, he wondered if the attacker was Pajar Sultanate, the renowned 6-star knight from the Sultanate of Bavar. The realization unsettled him. Why would a knight of Pajar be fighting on Imperial soil, especially when a non-aggression pact was still in effect between the two nations? Even more puzzling was the specific targeting of the Restston family, as no significant hostility existed between the duchy and the Sultanate. Despite his confusion, Hans resolved to uncover the truth. The tide of the battle appeared to be turning in their favor. The two young masters were holding their own, and morale was high. But in a brief moment of distraction, Hakim seized the opportunity and struck Hans with a powerful blow. Mocking him for letting his guard down, Hans pointed out that the knight formation had already collapsed. Hans then responded angrily, summoning his strength for a counterattack, but Hakim manages to jump back. Hans offered him a final chance to surrender, claiming further resistance was futile. Looking around the battlefield, Hakim saw that his knights had been defeated and their formation broken. Hans, seizing the moment, offered him and his remaining men the chance to surrender, promising to spare their lives. He questioned the wisdom of dying so far from home. But Hakim rejected the offer outright, stating that he intended to fulfill his mission regardless of the cost. Suddenly, he unleashed his mana in a violent surge, causing the energy within his body to spike uncontrollably. Hans immediately recognized the recklessness of the move. Hakim had no fear of death, and this final act would endanger the young masters. Left with no choice, Hans prepared to release his own full power to stop him. At that critical moment, Karon's voice rang out across the battlefield. He expressed his disappointment in Hans, appearing suddenly and reminding him that his job had been to prevent Karon from causing trouble, not to fall to the enemy. With biting sarcasm, Karon questioned whether Hans was really about to surrender already. Hakim turned toward the source of the voice. Karon, standing proudly, confirmed his identity without hesitation. In one swift, calculated strike, severed Hakim's arms. Hakim, now mortally wounded, staggered back. As he lay dying, he referred to Karon as a monster. Karon, unfazed, thanked him for the compliment. But even in victory, Karon noticed something wrong. His sword, Guillotine, began to vibrate again. He understood what this meant. The threat had not ended. He looked at Hakim, now barely breathing, and accused him of hiding one final trick. Hakim responded with a cryptic apology, expressing no regrets, and whispered something ominous as his body began to emit a dangerous, unstable energy. Realization struck too late. Hakim had activated a self-destruction spell. Hans, sensing the incoming blast, shouted for the knights to protect Lord Leo, who stood frozen in the center of the battlefield. Without hesitation, Hans threw himself in front of Karon, attempting to shield him from the explosion. Karon, stunned, demanded to know what was happening, and Hans grimly explained that Hakim was using a suicide technique. As the spell activated, Hans apologized, blaming himself for the situation. In his final words before the blast, he pleaded with Karon to survive. The resulting explosion was massive, devastating the battlefield and consuming everything in its radius. Amid the smoking aftermath, Karon heard a strange voice speaking directly to him, a voice that was not human. It called him a foolish creature for awakening it and remarked that it had not tasted the blood of knights in quite some time. The voice announced that it would now fulfill its part and advised Karon to close his eyes tightly, lest his eyeballs explode from the force. When the smoke cleared, Karon found Hans lying unconscious on the ground. He hurried to his side and tried to wake him. Hans slowly opened his eyes, irritated, and began scolding Karon for his indifference after he had risked his life. Karon, unfazed, coldly replied that he had never asked to be saved. Then another voice spoke, this time from Karon's sword. It mocked them both, claiming that Karon would not have survived without its intervention and insisting that some gratitude was in order. Karon was stunned, realizing that his sword had just spoken to him. He looked around at the destruction left in the wake of the explosion, bewildered by what had just occurred. Karon asked the sword if it was an ego sword, a weapon forged from the souls of mad blacksmiths. The sword, clearly insulted, flew into a rage at the comparison and threatened to sever Karon's neck if he dared repeat it. Karon, unfazed, wondered aloud why the sword had saved him if it now wanted to kill him over something so trivial. With grumbling irritation, the sword explained that it had expended all the mana it had stored to protect him from the explosion. Had it not done so, it claimed, Karon's head would have already rolled. Now exhausted, it complained bitterly and asked whether there was another way to absorb mana besides fighting. It then mused that perhaps it could draw power from Karon's blood instead. That suggestion led Karon to a new conclusion, that the sword must be a demonic weapon if it craved its wielder's blood. Just then, a group of knights arrived. Their commander introduced himself as Hyri, leader of the Taba self-defense forces. Hans stepped forward to introduce himself as well. As they spoke, Karon sheathed his sword. The weapon complained that it couldn't speak while inside the sheath. Karon responded dryly, saying, "That was wonderful," before ordering it to sleep quietly. Commander Hyri, recognizing Karon as the grandson of Grand Duke Halo, took full responsibility on behalf of the region for the incident. He explained that he had been dispatched by the mayor to escort the ducal family members to safety. Karon accepted the arrangement and asked that the wounded be taken care of immediately. While riding in the carriage, Karon brought up the possibility of returning to AZURE Sea Fortress. However, Hans notes that the danger might not yet be over and that the ongoing investigation would take time. Karon, however, reassured him that he had already contacted Sir Zeras, and there was no need for unnecessary concern. He then changed the subject, asking Hans if he knew the identity of the man who had blown himself up. Hans confirmed that it was Shion Hakim, a 6-star knight from the Sultanate of Pajar. Karon immediately began considering the political implications. He wondered if the non-aggression pact, signed personally by his grandfather and the Sultanate, was now on the verge of collapse. Hans noted that while relations between the Empire and the Sultanate had been deteriorating, they had not deteriorated to a point that would justify such an act of aggression. Karon, however, concluded that Hakim's actions alone could be interpreted as a sufficient casus belli. As they traveled, Karon noticed Leo staring blankly at his own blood-stained hands. The younger boy appeared shaken. He admitted he hadn't heard what Karon had said earlier, and wondered aloud why his hands were trembling. Karon knows that such a reaction was normal. It had been Leo's first time taking a life. Becoming desensitized to death was difficult, but it was something Leo would have to overcome. That was the reality of their world. Shortly after, a guard riding alongside the carriage announced that they would soon arrive in the autonomous territory of Taba. As the carriage entered the city, Karon gazed out the window and commented internally on the opulence of its architecture. At the gates, the mayor greeted them warmly, welcoming the group to Taba. He expressed his relief at their safe arrival and pledged that the territory would do everything in its power to identify the mastermind behind the attack. He also promised full cooperation with the Restston family's investigation. Karon interrupted the mayor's formalities to assure him that they were already aware that Taba had no involvement in the attack. The mayor visibly relaxed at those words. Hans noted that the mayor had changed considerably since his days as finance minister. The mayor laughed bitterly, confessing that he regretted ever accepting the cursed position of mayor. He then apologized for speaking too informally in the presence of a duke's grandson. Karon, however, requested that he speak freely, explaining that excessive formality from his elders made him uncomfortable. The mayor hesitated, unsure at first how to respond to such a request from a noble youth, but eventually accepted, albeit with caution. He quickly corrected himself after accidentally addressing Karon by name. To shift the mood, the mayor suggested they move the conversation to a more private location. Inside a quiet chamber, Karon began his inquiry. He noted that the attackers had used conventional explosives, not mana-based attacks, to destroy the railway. He pointed out that such explosives could only be procured through the Empire's tightly controlled military supply administration, making smuggling from within nearly impossible. Based on this, he proposed a theory, that the explosives had been smuggled into the Empire from the outside, most likely from the Sultanate of Pajar. He reminded the mayor that only the Empire and the Sultanate had the technical ability to manufacture explosives of that caliber. Then he added a subtle but pointed observation. If any merchants from Taba were involved in smuggling those materials, the situation could become deeply embarrassing for the city. The mayor was taken aback by the precision of Karon's analysis. He realized that denying the theory would only make him look complicit. With no viable alternative, he conceded that the probability of smuggling was indeed high. Internally, he cursed the reckless smugglers who had placed him in such a precarious position. At that point, Karon issued a clear reminder. The Sea Wave Knights and members of AZURE Sea Fortress had been harmed in the incident. The mayor immediately understood. He was being boxed in. The Restston family was known for repaying favors tenfold and vengeance 100-fold. If he failed to cooperate, he would be finished. In an attempt to steer the conversation elsewhere, the mayor asked about Karon's father and claimed to be on familiar terms with Sir Gale, Karon's maternal grandfather. Karon responded with a sarcastic smile, remarking that the sudden name-dropping confirmed the mayor's skills as a seasoned politician. Just then, an aide burst into the room with urgent news from the capital. The mayor assumed the message concerned the departure of the Imperial Guard, but the aide corrected him. The news was more serious. Not only had the Imperial Guard departed, but the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service himself was en route to Taba, leading the 1st Special Division. The aide revealed the Commissioner's name, Cain Ltor, infamously known as the Demon King. At the mention of that name, the mayor was visibly shaken. He asked Karon if it was truly Sir Gale who was coming. Karon confirmed it without hesitation. His grandfather, he explained, would abandon everything if it meant protecting his grandson from danger. That night, the forces of the Internal Revenue Service's 1st Special Division arrived in the territory of Taba, casting a tense atmosphere over the city's bustling streets. Commissioner Cain Ltor led the division with a stern expression that offered little comfort. Elsewhere, 2 masked men observed the scene quietly. His attendant remarked on his swift arrival, to which the man simply replied that it concerned his grandson. In the city, the merchants of Taba were gripped by a mix of anger and confusion. The sudden announcement of a tax investigation without any warning left them shaken. Complaints echoed through the room, especially at the news that the dreaded 1st Special Division would be conducting the inquiry. Inside the meeting hall, the mayor struggled to calm the rising voices when Karon and his group entered. One of the senior merchants sided with the mayor, urging others to recognize the severity of the situation. Karon addressed the gathering directly, explaining the gravity of the incident. Not only had the Emperor's railway been destroyed, but the Grand Duke's grandson and members of AZURE Sea Fortress had also been attacked. He pointed out that the explosives used in the assault were likely smuggled through trade guilds operating in the territory of Taba, then asked if they now understood the seriousness of their situation. The merchants, stunned, quickly retreated from their earlier protests. One of them claimed they had only requested more time to prepare. When Karon asked for his name, the man introduced himself as Viscount Humor of the Humor Trading Group. Karon responded coldly, stating that he would personally ensure the Viscount's name reached his grandfather at the National Tax Service. The terrified merchant immediately begged him to reconsider, admitting he had spoken too hastily. At that moment, the arrival of the 1st Special Division and its commissioner was announced. Gale entered the hall and declared the immediate commencement of a full-scale tax investigation into all trade groups. He cited reports of massive wealth accumulated through smuggling and tax evasion and confirmed that the order had come directly from the Emperor and cooperation is fully required. Karon, watching the imposing presence of the division, is really thrilled. Leo asked Hans whether the rumors were true. Hans explained that the 1st Special Division specialized in cases involving powerful merchants and nobles and possessed the authority to mobilize the Imperial Guard if necessary. Leo understood. They were not to be taken lightly. After delivering his orders, Gale approached Karon and greeted him with warmth, remarking that 3 years had passed since their last meeting. Later, in private, Gale questioned Karon about his condition. Karon assured him that he was fine. When asked whether he suspected anyone, Karon denied having specific suspects. Gale raised the possibility of internal involvement, but Karon dismissed it, reasoning that if one of his uncles had been behind the attack, no trace would have been left. In this case, however, the traces seemed intentional, almost as if someone had wanted the Sultanate of Pajar to be blamed. Gale asked if Karon intended to pursue the culprits himself. He advised against it, reminding him that the world was filled with powerful and dangerous individuals. He instructed Karon to remain quiet and let the adults handle the matter, informing him that they would leave for the capital the next morning by imperial order. Karon nodded and promised to remain calm, but as Gale walked away, he realized that Karon never had any intention of keeping that promise. That same night, in the residence of a man named Oyun, servants hurried to load a carriage. His wife, seated inside, asked if he would be coming with them. He reassured her, promising he would follow shortly, then gave the order for the carriage to depart. As the carriage disappeared into the night with his family calling his name, Oyun stood alone, cursing the situation that forced him to send them away first. Elsewhere, the man stood on a rooftop watching the city. One of his men approached and reported that the targets had begun to move. Halo gave the order for the operation to begin, swiftly and without error. Meanwhile, Karon was in his room, sharpening his sword in the quiet of the night. Sir Xerus arrived and asked whether he was planning to stir up trouble again. Karon replied that he had heard Commissioner Gale had ordered him not to go out, then asked whether Xerus had come to stop him. But Xerus hadn't come to argue. He had come to deliver a message. With a formal tone, Xerus relayed the order from Grand Duke Halo. Cain Restston, youngest grandson of the Restston family, was to locate those responsible and extract the blood price for the dead. He was to show them what it meant to defy the law of AZURE Sea Fortress. Karon, hearing the words, smiled darkly and pledged his obedience. Xerus exhaled slowly and remarked that it would indeed be a long night. Later, Karon and Leo were moving through the eastern districts of Taba in disguise. Leo, frustrated, grumbled about having to play the role of a servant and questioned why they needed to visit a place known for illegal dealings. Karon explained that if two young nobles wandered through such an area without escorts, it would raise suspicion. Though Leo understood, he continued complaining about being the one forced into the servant's role. Karon silenced him, stating that they were close to the location Xerus had mentioned. Leo glanced around nervously, remarking that the area looked far too shady for young masters to be visiting. Karon mocked him and offered to let him return if he was afraid. Suddenly, a man appeared and questioned their presence. Karon, cautious, grabs his sword. The man stepped forward, explaining that they had been sent by Sir Xerus. The man welcomed them with deference, revealing his face and introducing himself as Julio. He offered to take them to a secure safe house that had been prepared for their arrival. Inside the safe house, Julio assured them that the space was protected by anti-eavesdropping enchantments, allowing them to speak freely. Karon, noting that Julio was a native of Taba, asked how he had become an informant for the Restston family. Julio explained that he was repaying a long-standing debt to Sir Xerus, who had shown him kindness during his childhood. Without wasting time, Karon revealed that they had intelligence suggesting someone was plotting to attack the Restston family by smuggling explosives and exploiting insider knowledge about their trip to the capital. He asked Julio if he knew who was responsible. Julio confirmed that he did. According to the information he had gathered, only two trading groups in the black market were dealing in explosives, the Kerr Group and the Caligo Group. However, the Kerr Group was reportedly in the process of withdrawing from black market dealings. When asked about the Caligo Group, Julio explained that it was composed of former slaves known for accepting any job, no matter how dangerous, as long as it was profitable. He then shared a critical update. Members of the Caligo Group had left the city earlier that day, which Karon found especially suspicious. Karon weighed the possibilities. The Kerr Group, currently retreating from illicit activity, and the Caligo Group, comprised of reckless individuals with nothing to lose. Leo noted that they didn't have time to investigate both and asked where they should go next. Karon smiled and remarked that the answer was obvious. People with nothing to lose were always the most dangerous. With that, they decided to pursue the Caligo Group, and Julio pledged to lead them to the group's black market entrance. Elsewhere, Mayor Glenn was speaking with Commissioner Gale. Glenn questioned whether Gale was truly comfortable allowing Karon to operate independently. Gale explained that Grand Duke Halo had written to him personally, pleading for Karon to be given free rein. He added that wolves had their own way of handling other wolves. Glenn then disclosed that Karon had even asked him for a personal favor, to devise any excuse that might delay or deter him from interfering. While Gale was impressed by the boy's boldness, he remained concerned, noting that Karon was still only 13. Glenn dismissed the concern, stating that Karon had already proven himself and that age was meaningless in the face of genius. Gale insisted that Taba was a dangerous place. Trade groups there were bribing politicians in the capital in an effort to expand their influence. He pointed out that, although Duke Halo had chosen to remain on the border, the great noble houses of the capital were keeping a close eye on the Restston family. Taba, he said, was filled with opportunists desperate to gain political favor. Gale says that this was precisely why the Emperor had intervened, to ensure that the Empire was not handed over to self-serving factions. Glenn then delivered unexpected news. Sir Mason was in Taba. Gale was stunned and asked if he meant Mason, the Unbreakable Shield, Mason the 8-star. Back in the Eastern District, Karon and his companions arrived at the entrance to the Caligo Black Market. Julio confirmed it was the only access point, and explained that in an emergency, it could be sealed from within. Karon dryly remarked on the brutality of such a tactic. As they approached the entrance, their way was suddenly blocked by a group of guards who had seized and bound Julio. One of them explained that, by order of their boss, no customers would be received that day and politely asked them to leave. When Julio questioned the reason, the guard claimed ignorance and reiterated the request. As Karon and Leo continued to press the issue, the guard drew his sword in warning. Karon, undeterred, calmly invited him to act on his threat and see what would happen. The guard hesitated, clearly uncertain. Julio, alarmed, pleaded with Karon to remain calm. At that, Karon turned to Leo, still disguised as servant, and instructed him to initiate Plan B.